The bell rang through Maple Creek Elementary, and children rushed out to the playground, laughing and chasing the last touch of golden sunlight that stretched across the wide school lawn. But inside room 108, Mr. Jonathan Miller remained seated at his desk, staring quietly at the tiny lunchbox hidden inside his drawer, not his lunch, but a small sandwich he had secretly saved for a child who hadn't eaten again. Jonathan wasn't just a teacher, he was a lifeline for the invisible wounds his students carried. Every morning, he noticed the same things: tired eyes, forced smiles, and small hands trying to hide hunger behind politeness. One student in particular, Liam Carter, had begun to worry him. Liam was a quiet boy with a soft voice and a brave smile, but his fragile frame told another story. During recess, Jonathan stepped outside toward the school's small park, where green trees swayed over the benches and a gentle breeze whispered through the leaves. He found Liam sitting alone, pretending to tie his shoe just to stay away from the noisy lunch tables. The other children unwrapped chips and burgers. Liam had nothing. "Hey, champion," Jonathan said softly. "Why aren't you eating?" Liam looked away. "I'm not hungry, Mr. Miller." It was a lie. Jonathan had seen this too many times to mistake it. He sat beside him and pretended to look at the sky. "Sometimes we say we're not hungry because we don't want anyone to worry," he said quietly. "But it's okay to let someone care." Liam didn't respond, but his trembling hands said enough. That afternoon, after class, Jonathan waited until the hallway emptied. He opened the small drawer and pulled out a sandwich, a carton of milk, and 2 apples, bought with money he didn't really have to spare, but a kindness his heart could not refuse. He placed them gently into a brown paper bag and wrote just 3 words. "For my hero." The next morning, he arrived early and left the bag inside Liam's cubby before anyone entered. He didn't sign his name. He didn't want praise. He just wanted a child not to go hungry. When Liam found it, he looked around in confusion, then clutched the bag to his chest with wide, wet eyes. For a moment, just a moment, a child who had been silently struggling felt seen. But Jonathan knew this was only the beginning. More than one child came to school hungry. More than one little heart was hurting. And while he was poor in money, he was rich in compassion, and it was costing him more every day. Soon, this secret kindness would grow into something far bigger than he ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Jonathan Miller's quiet act of kindness slowly became a daily routine. But hunger is a silent chain. Where there is one child suffering, there are always others. And it didn't take long before he noticed Emma Brooks, a gentle girl who always offered excuses like, "I'm just not feeling hungry today," even though her hands trembled each time she smelled food from other lunchboxes. Jonathan began packing 2 bags. Then 3. He scarcely ate himself. Some evenings he walked home through Riverside Green Park, the wide grass shimmering under the afternoon sun, knowing he had just given away the dinner he had planned for himself. The tall trees arched over the walking path as if offering comfort, but the worry in his chest never eased. He was already living on a teacher's salary so thin it barely covered rent. His shoes were worn at the edges, and the coat he wore each winter had lost its lining years ago. Still, he never hesitated. If children needed him, he would do without. But goodness, when repeated silently, becomes pain disguised as duty. One Friday afternoon, as the golden leaves drifted along the school courtyard, the school accountant, Mrs. Hawkins, approached him. "Mr. Miller, I noticed several students in your class staying behind during lunchtime. Is there a supervision issue?" Jonathan swallowed. "No, they just like the classroom environment." He knew he was lying. And he wasn't good at lying. Later that day, while packing another bag of food in the teacher's lounge, he heard 2 teachers chatting nearby. "I heard some kids in Miller's class keep skipping lunch. Isn't that strange?" "Honestly," another replied, "if the parents can't feed them, the school should step in, not a teacher. It's not his job." Those words stung like cold wind through broken glass. Not his job. To him, it felt like the only job that mattered. That night, Jonathan sat on the edge of his old sofa, counting the few crumpled bills left in his wallet. He had just enough money to feed maybe 3 kids for a few more days. After that, he didn't know. He leaned his head back and whispered to himself, "Lord, please don't let me fail them." The next Monday, he quietly slipped breakfast bars and fruit cups into more cubbies, 6 this time. The need was growing faster than his pocket could bear. But while he was trying desperately to stay invisible, kindness has a way of leaving footprints. One small act had already begun to ripple through the halls of Maple Creek Elementary, and someone was about to notice the truth he could no longer hide. The first snowfall of winter brushed lightly across the school grounds, soft and white over the trees of Cedarview Park beside the campus. Children pressed their faces to the classroom windows, but Jonathan's eyes were elsewhere, worried, tired, and stretched thin. He had now begun feeding 8 students regularly. His wallet was empty, his refrigerator at home almost bare. But his resolve had not cracked, not yet. That morning, as he placed food quietly inside the cubbies before school started, a little voice behind him whispered. "Mr. Miller, is it really you?" He turned slowly. Liam stood there, eyes big with gratitude and trembling heartbreak. "You're the one feeding us, aren't you?" Jonathan froze. For a moment, words failed him. He knelt and looked gently into Liam's teary eyes. "I just didn't want you going hungry," he whispered. Liam threw his arms around him in a hug so sudden and desperate that Jonathan nearly lost his breath. The kind a child gives when they have had nothing soft in their life for a long time. But outside the doorway, unseen, someone else was watching. Later that day, as students filed out for recess, Jonathan found Principal Mark Reynolds standing silently at the back of the room. "Jonathan," he said softly, "we need to talk." His chest tightened. He feared one thing, that the school might stop him, or worse, fire him for interfering in matters beyond his responsibility. They sat across from each other in the quiet of the teacher's office. The principal's tone wasn't angry, yet filled with heavy seriousness. "Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell the administration?" Reynolds asked. Jonathan looked down at his worn shoes. "Because it wasn't paperwork, it was children. Hungry children don't have time for meetings and policies." The principal breathed in deeply. "You can't keep doing this alone," he said. Jonathan's throat tightened. "If I stop, they go hungry again." There was silence, a silence that spoke of rules, and a silence that spoke of conscience. When Principal Reynolds finally got up from his chair, Jonathan braced himself for the worst, a warning, a reprimand, a cold reminder of protocol. But something else was coming. Something he never expected, and what happened next would not only change his life, but every life inside those classroom walls. The next morning, Jonathan walked to school with a heavy heart and an emptier wallet. He feared everything was about to end, until he stepped inside the classroom and froze. Something was different. On every desk sat a small breakfast bag. Milk, fruit, sandwich, granola. Every single child, not just his hungry ones, had food waiting for them. He looked around in confusion until Principal Reynolds entered the room. "Mr. Miller," he said gently, "you were right. Hungry children cannot wait for policy. So the school won't either." Behind him came teachers, cafeteria workers, and even the janitor, all holding more food trays, more boxes, more bags. Word of his quiet sacrifice had reached them. No shame, no punishment, only respect, and love. The principal placed a hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "You gave from an empty pocket," he said softly. "The least we can do is give from a full one." Tears stung Jonathan's eyes, but before he could speak, the door opened again. Parents, from across the community, began to enter. Some brought baskets, some carried boxes of fruit, and others, with trembling voices, said, "We didn't know, thank you for seeing our children when the world didn't." Liam stood among them, holding a handmade sign with crooked letters that read, "Thank you for feeding our hearts." The little boy walked forward and hugged him again, stronger than before, not out of hunger this time, but out of finally feeling safe. Jonathan wiped a quiet tear. For so long, he had given silently, carrying the weight alone. Now, kindness was no longer a burden, it had become a river flowing back to him. That afternoon, the principal announced a permanent program. The Maple Creek Meal Initiative. No child in that school would ever go hungry again. Jonathan didn't become rich in money. But that day, he became rich in souls. Outside the classroom window, sunlight spilled through the trees of Cedarview Park, warm, calm, and merciful, just as kindness had returned to the man who once gave everything he didn't have. His sacrifice had started as a secret. It ended as a movement. A reminder that sometimes the smallest, quietest hearts change the world in ways no spotlight ever could. Movie camera. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please comment below, tell us what part moved you the most, and help this message of kindness reach more people. Don't forget to like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel, Kindness Quest, for more heartwarming stories that inspire hope and humanity.